stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Good afternoon. Welcome to a special daily trudge. Even though it's the third one, I can't really call it daily when it's multiple, can we? No, you cannot. No, you cannot call it a daily trudge when it's 3-4 times a day. It's all right. Went to go open a bank account, but we're grassroots, but not gonna be able to do that till 1:30 on Friday. So I came home and I took a nap. Took me a 20-minute power nap. What I do is I put on Pandora. Put on Pandora and listen to 5 songs and just close my eyes, and we might call it meditating, actually. Oh. All right. So every year I text my original sponsor because we went through a lot together. Need a lot, and I'll cover that part of my story when I get to it. His name's Paul. Great. He was a fantastic sponsor. He was a hard ass, and I needed it. I needed somebody like that. And so I wrote him. I said, "Hey, Paul, this is Deanna. Hit 9 years today. Opening 2 new detoxes. All my kids are back in my life. God is good. Thank you for being there when I needed someone the most." Ooh, crying. Ooh, it's gratitude crying. But man, he wrote me back. He said, "I'm so happy to hear that, Dion. It's unbelievable. It's been 9 years. What a milestone. You have a great story for newcomers. Never give up and keep searching out God. Thanks for the day. Thanks for the update. It made my day." Okay? We have an effect on people's lives, man. We have an effect. Let's get started. My story's kind of long. I do not know how long this will be. I'm not going to be able to tell my full story. But welcome to the Daily Trudge. My name is Dion. I'm going to be your host with the most today. If you're here, please say hello, whether you're watching the live or the rewatch. I'm just checking something real quick. Okay. Making sure there wasn't any chat going on. Because chat's been hit or miss. So, but people are probably driving, things like that. A lot of great birthday wishes today. A lot of great birthday wishes. All right. I'm going to show off my new chip. I went and met with Amber. This is my new chip. It is, for those of you without a camera, it is the Batman signal. And part of my story, some people don't know this about me yet, but Batman was my first higher power. It was. Batman was my first higher power. And it's funny. It's funny. You know, I'm really glad that somebody did come up to me. So I'm marking off my to-do list because I got things done today. That somebody approached me and said, "Hey, Dion, I understand and I get it, but come on, we got to be a little bit more serious about the program, man. We got to be a little more serious than that." So it is weird. Why is it not? Since I changed my my personal Facebook, it is not posting. It's not posting. That is so weird. Okay, I'm gonna have to figure that out. It's not posting the lives on Facebook on my personal page. But honestly, not many people find me through there. It's usually through the Daily Trudge or Raw Recovery. Raw Recovery. I love that name because I get to go raw. I was born in Utah. Born in Ogden, Utah. Yeah. The way I like to tell my story is growing up as a child, I wasn't a problem child, but I was a child with a lot of problems. Problems that I didn't know how to solve. This would include lying. I came out of the womb playing 3-card money. All right, that's a grifter's card trick. I know how it works too. I made a little money off 3-card Monty. All right, some different bar tricks, different stuff. Yeah, I grew up with a couple of things, and this part's going to be kind of short. I didn't have friends. I was a bedwetter until I was 11. So sleepovers, having people sleep over, these kinds of things, was not something that I did. I remember I spent the night over at a friend Jeff Walcott's. I peed during the night, and that was it. I never did it again. I had a lazy eye. Still have a lazy eye. You can see it. As I've gotten older, it's gotten worse again. It doesn't really affect my vision. It allows me to see to the right very far. No, it doesn't. Although I do have very good peripheral vision. But that comes from survival more than it comes from having a lazy eye. So I had to wear a patch, so I got to be a pirate. Got a lot of flack about that. I was always different. I was always odd. The things that I said were different. The things that I did were different than other people. And I would spend most of my childhood alone. I did not do very well in school. At one point, I had a speech impediment. And what happened, well, not one time when I was a kid, right? It's not like out of the blue, suddenly I had a speech impediment. I've had to learn how to retalk 3 times in my life. I'll cover that real quick. I went to the dentist once, and when they gave me Novocaine, and it numbed my tongue. Okay, my tongue was numb for like 9 months. I had to relearn how to talk. But anyway, I used to say my S's through my nose, so it'd be like my brother shot. Right. So I would talk like this. And my mom took me to the doctor, and he said, well, yeah, your son's retarded. Now, I smile and I kind of laugh at that now. But at the moment, all it did was made me feel even less a part of everything. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm retarded too, huh? And so they put me in the special needs class. And then I went to speech therapy because my mom just didn't quite believe the doctor. Thank you for that, Mom. All right. If there was anybody that believed that I was not these things, it was my mom. And she did everything she could to protect me from the bullies that lived in my house. That would be the man that raised me, Wendell, and my brothers, my older brothers. All right. You're stupid. You're dumb. What the fuck's wrong with you? Are you just fucking stupid? You know, I didn't get very good grades. I did get past the speech impediment clearly. I got through it. I made it. I grew up, for the most part, I grew up with one older brother, a younger sister, and a younger brother. My older brother is about 2 years ahead of me. My younger brothers and younger sister and brother, I think 4 and 6 years younger than me. It's either 4 or 6 or 6 and 8. I don't remember. quite off the top of my head. Um, but I grew up in a different household than the rest of my brothers and sisters. I did have another older brother who would move in with us when we moved to Colorado. But I lived in Utah until I was 9 years old, till 1979. I was born September 18th, 1970. And I was born 4 hours after Jimi Hendrix died. Right? No, I am not Jimi Hendrix. We'll just leave it at that. Although it's always been a running joke that I'm black. In fact, I tell you now, most of my listeners that don't have a camera probably think I'm black, but I'm not. I'm a white boy. But between my name and my voice, even during phone sales, I've had girlfriends on the phone with their grandparents. No, he's not black. I swear he's not black. And yeah, it's kind of funny, but it also kind of pisses me off. And I would tell them, don't let me meet your grandparents because I'm going to do everything that I can to act black in front of them just to torture them. Just to torture them. I remember the first time I had a drink. I was 7 years old. I remember it. We were coming home from Thanksgiving dinner. We used to go down to Salt Lake City. Grew up Mormon. All right, so big family. Go down. I was on Wendell's side of the family. All right. Now the thing is, my parents always told they said that my last name was Bates, but it was not. It's Miller. All right, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I'll get into that a little bit later. But so we were driving home, and I was thirsty. Right, and this was 1977, and there's an open container rolling around in the back of the. I was in the back seat, not the very back of our station wagon. We had one of those cruiser station wagons. It was badass, man. Later on, we would do a lot of partying in that thing. We'd take it on a few road trips while my parents were out of town. There was one time my parents were out of town. I'm like, hey, and I asked my brother Scott, because I knew he wanted to be alone with his girlfriend. Chicka chicka wow wow, that kind of be alone with his girlfriend. And I knew it. So I took advantage of it. I'm like, hey, I just want to pick up some of my friends, and we're gonna head down. I think we said we're gonna go to the movies or something like that. And he said, okay, your friend can drive, because I didn't have my driver's license yet, and my friend Brian did. And he said 2 rules: do not pack up the car, and do not go to Daniels Park. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not a problem. And we filled up the damn car. We went to Daniels Park. Oh, it was kind of up in the woods. And now they call it Parker. Anyway, it's part of Parker. Actually, it's part of Highlands Ranch is what it is. But we used to have to take dirt roads to get there. And the paddy wagons would show up, and police helicopters, and we'd run. Anyway, it was a good time. It was. Not all my drinking was bad. So I'm like, Mom, can I have a drink of this back here? And they chuckle a little bit, and they're like, yeah, go for it. And I did. And I took a nice swig too. And it burned. Oh boy, did it burn. I loved it. I loved the burn. There was something about it. The taste was horrible, but the burn, and you guys know, any alcoholic knows what I'm talking about. That burn, it's almost like a satisfaction. All right. Now, that didn't make me want to drink more or anything like that. It's just the first time that I drank, 7 years old. All right. So eventually we would move to Colorado. Wendell got a new job. He worked for a place called Mountain Bell. That's what it was called back then. Nowadays it's called Comcast, but or US West. Fuck, I don't even know what it's called anymore. They change names all the time so they can keep getting away with not paying people their, when their retirement. Right. And we moved here when I was 9. I moved into, I will let you know that I grew up pretty much in white suburbia. Right. In Utah, there were no black people in my school. There weren't any black people. There was no, let's put it this way, there was no diversity. That's probably a better way to put it. Because there weren't, Asians or Hispanics or no, good old white people, white suburbia. All right. And we moved to Colorado, and that's, we were in white suburbia. We were one of the first houses over there at Mineral on Broadway. Highlands Ranch was dirt. You guys don't know what I'm talking about, so it doesn't matter. Now I want to clarify something. My mom is a recovering alcoholic. Actually, she's a recovered alcoholic. She has about 40 years of sobriety. And when we moved to Colorado, where drinking started getting worse. She would start to isolate, and this is part of the disease. And I'm not mad at her. I don't hate her for it. I get it. If anybody gets it, I understand. And but I would start to take care of the kids. I have somebody, because Wendell was working 2 jobs. He was a good codependent. He was a good coda. Very angry. Very angry. Did a lot of yelling. Hit us with belts, things like that. But anyway, I'm not going to get into the abuse. The 70s were, I just got to say, they were different, man. It wasn't, and I'm going to tell you, every spanking I got, I fucking earned. So it's not like I could blame them. Right? I did earn them. It's not anything that I would hit my kids for, but gosh, that's what they were taught. Right. And I cannot sit here and point the finger at my parents for who I am. I can't do that. I'm 54 years old, man. Right. You got to get to a point where you're no longer pointing the finger at other people for who you are. You got to get past that. Man, almost 20 minutes in, I'm still talking 9 years old here. Well, you got to have a little bit of background about the family. And so by the time I was 10, 11, I'd say 11, I pretty much did what I wanted because I didn't have any friends. So I always did what I wanted. And I was a latchkey kid, which means I had a key to my house around my neck. We actually hid it in the yard because there was only one key, because we were always losing the key, and that pissed my dad off. And right. And I would get in a lot of trouble. See, left to my own devices, I always got in trouble. It didn't matter what age I was. And the consequences, I didn't fucking care. I didn't care. The last time I went trick-or-treating, I was 12. That was the last time. Otherwise, I was grounded or I wasn't living there. It might have been younger than that, but I don't want to push it. I was grounded a lot. But that didn't affect me. I didn't have any friends. Where are they grounding me from? I was always home anyway. I was doing whatever I wanted. I would skip school, and the consequence would be, okay, you have to stay home unattended for 3 days at home and no school for you. I'm like, oh no, what a punishment. All right. So my parents had a hard time because they couldn't find a punishment that could match what I did, because the punishments never really seemed to bother me. I didn't know any better. I was a kid that was bad attention was better than no attention at all. Right. And I'll use an example of my bedwetting on that. They tried everything. There was this one thing that I'd have to sleep on this metal sheet. And if I started to pee, by the way, it's too late already once you started, it would sound an alarm. Yeah, and wake up everybody in the house. That lasted one night. And then I threw it in the trash. It got very, like, that was very expensive. I'm like, well, you wasted your fucking money. Right. What it did is it made me very good at laundry. I was very good at laundry. But it wasn't until until Wendell came up and said, hey, Dion, tell you what, you don't wet the bed for, I think it was like 2 weeks. You don't wet the bed for 2 weeks, and I'll take you anywhere you want to go, within reason. There was a money, a certain amount attached to it. And I picked an Avalanche game. Avalanche at that time were not our hockey team, they were our soccer team. I was a big soccer player. Okay. And I did it. That night, I stopped. It wasn't the money. It was because he wanted to spend time with me. That's what it was. Because I was going to be loved, because something was going to be special for Dion. And I hadn't had that before. I hadn't had that. See, I always missed out on everything. Like I wanted to play the recorder, right? And I moved here in 5th grade. Well, in Utah, you played it in the 5th grade. But when we got to in Utah, you played it in the 5th grade. But when I moved to Colorado, you played it in the 4th grade. So I didn't even get to play the recorder. And I wanted to. So it seemed like I always barely missed out on everything in this life. I was also a big people watcher, which is why I have the intuition that I have today. I didn't have friends, so I watched. All right. So my mom's drinking was getting pretty heavy. And she would pass out kind of early, 8, 9 o'clock. You know how it is. I did the same thing in my drinking. And so I put the kids to bed. My little brother and sister, I would sneak into her room. I would steal a beer, sometimes 2. I would go downstairs like an adult. And I would have a beer and chew. And I would watch Taxi and then MASH, and I'd go to bed at 11. That's what I did. I did it for a very, very long time. Then one day, my mom decided to go to treatment. Hey, Amber, good to see you. My mom decided to go to treatment, which was the best thing in the world, right? Now, I've always been a mama's boy. I'm still a mama's boy. You know, sure, we've argued, we've gotten into fights, we've done a lot of things, but I've never, ever not loved my mother. No way. Mm-mm. I've always, she was the one that protected me. In fact, growing up until I was 18 months old, nobody was allowed to hold me except my mother, my grandma, or my favorite auntie, who I get to see in a month. Yay, I haven't seen her in years. And so she decided to go to treatment. And when she came back, things changed. Suddenly she wanted to be a part of everything. She took over the kids, and this pissed me off. I'm just going to tell you what happened. It pissed me off. I'm like, where's my thank you? Where's my this? And by this time, my drinking is already increasing. I think I'm 13 at this point. My drinking is already increasing. Okay. Well, I started to get into a little bit of trouble. Well, no, something happened, and I was invited. I don't know how. To this day, I still think I invited myself. I was invited to a party. Okay. Now, I was a very lonely guy. Between my bedwetting, being made fun of, my name was Dion. My name's Dion. Dion Bates is the name I grew up with. And this was the name that my brothers made sure everybody called me. Peon Dion Masturbates. The masturbates I didn't really mind, but they knew I was a bedwetter, and they just did not give a fuck. All right. That's why I say I lived with my abusers. I lived a much different life. I did not grow up in the same household as them. Now, I'm sure they had their own problems and things like that. But I was always odd. I was always different. Always. I can't remember, even to this day, I'm different than most of the people that I meet. I'm outgoing. I do this. Heck, I was just at the bank and I was holding up the door. Well, somebody with a wheelchair was coming up. So I pressed the button and kind of made sure the door stayed open while they were going through. And they were like, thank you. I'm like, oh, not a problem. I'm a man. I love pushing buttons. See, I get to have fun with it. And the other person comes here. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. I got this for you. And like, thank you. I'm like, certainly. I'm just practicing to be a Walmart greeter, and I'll be in the middle of a room and I want to be the center of attention. It's still a need that I go through. All right. So anyway, I got invited to this party, and there was beer there. I remember people were taking like sips and stuff. I finished my first beer, and well, you know how it goes. See, we alcoholics are born with a high tolerance to alcohol. It's one of the indicators of alcoholism that you'll hear these ladies that weigh 90 pounds soaking wet drinking men or other people, but men because they tend to have a higher tolerance and they're bigger and stuff, right? Drinking 200-pound men under the table. That is a sign of alcoholism. That is a sign. But that night, and I remember it specifically, I remember the basement. I remember the feeling. And suddenly, Dion was fucking cool because he could drink. Right? It would lower my inhibitions. And I mostly hung around with adults, so most of my jokes were adult jokes. But finally in my fucking life, after 13 years of misery, I was accepted. And that was more important than anything else in this world. Now, here's the fallacy of alcoholism. See, that moment, what was it? It was perfect. It was perfect. I was experiencing something new. But the problem is I would spend the rest of my drinking career trying to get back to that one moment in time. Never, ever to come close to it again, because you cannot experience something new twice. Can't experience something new twice. Okay. Well, from there, I actually started getting friends, and my drinking was all, if I had a chance to drink, I was drinking. Right. So my mom was sober, and I would go to AA meetings with her. In fact, I was in Alateen for a year. I went to an Alateen conference once with a case of beer, and we acted like we had British accents all weekend and shit. I was drunk the whole weekend. Anyway, I'm grateful that I went to AA meetings with my mom. She didn't take any of the other kids, but I'm sure she saw in me some of her, is what it was. And I will be eternally grateful to AA and Alateen for the fact that it taught me that I might have an addicted personality, and if I did drugs, it was going to be even worse. So I stayed away from harder drugs because I was taught at a young age what would happen to me. Not only that, but that way I could use other people's drug use as a way to say, well, at least I'm not a crack addict, right? Which really, honestly, there's not much difference. They're both just as screwed up. All right. I ran away. I think that's when I ran away. No, I ran away when I was on pass. At one point, I ran away to Kansas, Beloit, Kansas. And I went with this guy. What was his name? It'll come back to me. His name will come back to me. Right. But I ran away to Kansas. And one night I drank and I blacked out for 2 days. I woke up in a hotel room with the biggest headache that I've ever had, a gash on my forehead, and I was soaked from head to toe in urine. That was probably the worst hangover I've ever had in my life, but I digress. So I was out of control. I wasn't going to school. Even if they grounded me, I'm like, whatever. I would sneak out of the house. I snuck out. I remember because I got the room in the basement, and so I would sneak out through the basement window. And one time I came back, and my dad had put a cooler full of water and ice underneath the window, so that I would step into it. But what happened is when I went to go step down, my foot hit the lid and closed it. So he didn't catch me. So I opened the lid back up and I acted like nothing happened, is what I did. After that, I just walked out the front door. I wasn't even quiet about it. I would just leave. I'm like, well, fuck, if they know, then why am I going through all this rigmarole? At one point, my parents sat me down. They gotta. Dion, why are you so angry? And I tried to be as honest as I could. You know, as a 14-year-old can be. And I told them how angry I was at them. And that the reason that I punched holes in walls is because Wendell taught me to do it that way. See, I'd already been in therapy for 2 years, so I knew how to talk. I already knew how to use I statements and shit like that. I picked that stuff up pretty quick. I also believe that I told them that I hated living with them and that I thought that they should divorce. About 2 years before that, I found out that the man that was raising me wasn't my real father. My mom told me while she had been drinking on the way to the liquor store. Again, I do not fault her for that. I do not. Alcohol, do I still dislike what the disease did to my mom? Yes. But that wasn't my mom. Right? And I always knew that. I'm like, that's not my actual mom. My mom's much different than that. But so she had told me on the way in, and I told her, Mom, I kind of knew I'm the only kid with brown hair and brown eyes. Right? Because they knew that my older brother, Scott, they knew that he had a different dad. They already knew that. And he has brown hair and blue eyes. My younger brother and sister have blonde hair and blue eyes. And it pissed me off. And I'll tell you why. Because what they were saying is, Dion, you're so stupid you couldn't figure out that wasn't your real father. But I kind of knew. So they sat me down, Dion, what's wrong? I told them why I was so angry and stuff. And the next day they told me, hey, Dion, on Friday, you have a dentist appointment. So make sure you're at the house at blah, blah time. I'm like, okay. I get home and my bag is packed. And what they did is they took me to a place called Comitas Crisis Center. And I would not go back home. Sorry, this is still hard. It's still hard. Again, I don't blame my parents. I mean, what the fuck else were they going to do with me? I was unsafe, not just to myself, but to other people. You know, I might hurt one of their children. So I have no more animosity. But that feeling of abandonment still sits in me. So from 14 to 17, I would be in and out of group homes. I'd be this is what happened. I went from living in white suburbia to living amongst Crips and Bloods with gang members. I was now the minority. And I had to learn very quickly how to survive. Very quickly. Most of my survival skills come from being in group homes. Yeah. I'm going to tell you about the great escape I had real quick. All right. But before I get to that, what it did is it made me a better criminal. I have a criminal mind. My default mind is criminal. I go out of my way to be a different person. We all do. Right? To be the person that we're supposed to be. See, my criminal mind is more of like a really bad habit. But now I'm who Dion is supposed to be. I'm the real Dion now. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So anyway, I was in a shelter called Gemini Shelter. And I was third level. I got a pass every day. I was getting straight A's because I was actually applying myself. By this time, I had been kicked out of Littleton Public Schools. I never went to high school in the sense that you went to high school. Sorry. The closest I got to it was taking Shannon to homecoming when I was 18. Okay. But they said, Dion, we're going to place you over here. And I kept telling my mom and my caseworker, I'm like, hey, I'm doing really well here. I want to go back to school. I want to go apply myself. I want to go back home and prove myself. But instead, they decided to put me in a place called Adolescent Family Institute of Colorado. Is off 38th and Kipling. It is not there anymore. But this is a full story. It's going to take a minute. The very first night I tried to run. All right. And the night person caught me. He acted like he was sleeping. And to this day, I remember exactly what he looks like. And I think I saw him in an AA meeting like 10 years later. I'm pretty sure I did. Right. And they caught me. And so the next day they put a shirt on me that says property of AFIC and some orange jumper pants so that I'm easy to spot. And they're like, because you tried to run, you don't get to go play football with everybody. I'm like, I give a fuck. What makes you think I care about going to the park and playing football with everybody? All right. So they kind of left me unattended, and I was walking around. I was looking for my stuff because they took all my clothes and stuff. And I saw on this board that we were going to do some activities. And one of these activities was White River rafting. I'm like, oh, I want to go White River rafting. And then below it, I said, make sure parents supply tents and sleeping bags. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. So I played the Good Samaritan. For the next month, oh, I was spot on. Okay? I knew how to play the fucking game. I knew how to play the game. And I'll be honest, it was pretty posh. We had a tennis, no, we didn't have a tennis court. What was it? It was some kind of court. I think it was like a half basketball court. I don't quite remember, but we had a pool. You know, there were a couple cute girls there that I could flirt with, things like that. And I became the Boy Scout of Adolescent Family. I was even helping other people out. I was getting involved in the groups, getting very good grades. They're like, oh man, you're doing. And so what we do is we go White River rafting, right? And we come back. And during this time, what I've done is I've convinced another person to run with me. Because I know that if I convince somebody to run with me, they won't take me back. And we're only going to get like part of the story here. Not all of it. This story, yeah, but my full personal story, I don't know that I'm going to be able to cover it all. We're going on 40 minutes here. And I haven't even gotten to the juicy shit yet. I'm kidding. All right. So 4th of July comes around. And what I did is I signed up to take out the trash. Right. And right before dinner, everybody's like, we got to go upstairs, get changed because we've been in the pool and everything. And what we did is, remember, we still have the sleeping bags. Right. July 4th, 1986. And what I do is I take out the screen from the bathroom, which lands right on the side of Kipling. And then I throw a blanket. I threw a blanket because there was a barbed wire fence. I'm smart. Told you I got a criminal mind. So we go to dinner. Everything's great. I'm like, you better fucking stuff yourself, dude. Stuff. I ate so much cantaloupe. Right. So it was time to do trash. Right. I'm like, hey, dude, can you help me with the trash? Like, yeah, I can help you do that. We go out there. We don't even put the trash in the trash cans. We go straight to our stuff. I throw the blanket over the fence. We climb over the fence, jump it, go to Highline Canal Trail, and walk to Southwest Plaza. It's a long way. They didn't know we were gone for over 2 hours. All right. So I ran away. I was out and I was on the run for 2.5, 3 months, most of the summer. No, then it wasn't that long, probably a month and a half. But so I was living in a park for 2 weeks. Then what I started doing is I started breaking into my mom's house when everybody was asleep, and I started sleeping in my own room. I ate there, I showered there. I got away with it for a month till one night my brother heard me breaking in and he called the cops. I got surrounded. I went to juvie, Arapahoe shelter, blah, blah, blah. All right. So now I'm going to fast forward to when I'm 32. Actually, I was like 30, 31, and I was a phone technician for Lucent Technologies. So I used to install these big phone switches. I was a Microsoft engineer and stuff. And we get a call. I get a ticket, and it's for Adolescent Family Institute of Colorado. Right? And I go in, and I'm checking. I'm like, I'm here to fix one of your phones and stuff. And I'm like, I tell her my name is Dion, and she's like, okay. I'm like, do you remember the name Dion Bates? And she looks at me and she goes, are you Dion Bates? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, you're a legend around here. We had to change rules, a bunch of rules because of you. Oh, they should have never fucked with me. All right, so that's that story. All right, I'm going to kind of skip through. Eventually, what I would do is I would get emancipated at the age of 16. All right, I would live on my own, get my own first apartment. By the time I was 17 and a half, I was living on Skid Row. I think I'm just going to do the part where I sobered up and things happened for me the first time. You know what? I'll probably go a full hour. All right. Problem is I have to pee. So I may have to go take care of that real quick. But this is a hard part to talk about, man, because there's shame in it. There's shame in it. But I always taught that the alcoholic lived on Skid Row and I drank under a bridge. And the denial still is deep. But denial is deep. Well, this isn't the bad bridge. The one down there where all the crackheads are and stuff. And I'm not kidding. They was separated like that. People had their preferences, things like that. Granted, I wasn't on Skid Row living on the streets for more than, I would say, 4 or 5 months. But on March 16th, 1989, something changed. Now, what happened is I had been sleeping on some friends' couches and stuff. What I used to do is if I couldn't sleep at a friend's house, Littleton was still white suburbia. And what I would do is I'd go sleep in the laundry rooms of apartment buildings because it was warm. And people never really gave me a hard time. They'd come in and stuff. They'd be like, hey, are you okay? Yeah. I was just walking around. I need a little bit of rest, but yeah, I'm out of here. Thanks for waking me up. Yeah. Happened a couple of times, but usually I didn't get caught. One day a friend of mine came up to me, Smedley, and he's reached out for me for help a couple of times, but I just can't seem to. And he saved my life this day. And I've explained it to him. And he came up to me, he said, Dion, we can't do this with you anymore. We can't do this. You're going to have to go down to the shelter. Here's $5. He gave me $5, and then he took me to the bus stop. Now, I had been to AA before. In fact, I was in treatment at 16, 15, 16. And I was 16 and a half. So time's kind of hard for me. Right. And I got off the bus about 5 o'clock at night, quarter till 5 o'clock. And I was walking down Lawrence Street. And I knew I wasn't going to get a bed. I didn't know what I was going to do. But if Smedley had not said, you need to go down to the Samaritan shelter, because that's where I was headed, I didn't know it at the time, but I would have never gotten a bed. Not at 5 o'clock at night. Right? And it's March, middle of March. And it's fucking cold. I'm walking along. There's this guy ahead of me, about 5 feet ahead of me. And I noticed that he was carrying a 6-pack in a 7-Eleven bag. And if it wasn't for this moment right here, I would not be here. I would not be here. This young man saved my life that night. And he's getting ready to go into this building, and he looks at me and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I told him, "No, I'm not." And for some reason, I spilled the beans to him. I told him everything that I'm like, I was in step 13 for a month. I couldn't make it. I've got an alcohol problem. I'm living out here on the streets. I'm 18 years old. And he's like, "Come with me." He's like, I'll help you out. Come with me. I'm thinking, oh, great. He's got a 6-pack. We're going to sit down, have a couple of beers. Maybe I'll strum his guitar. We'll smoke some cigarettes and I'll be okay. I walk in, the door opens, and the brightest light I've ever seen comes shining out of this building into the dreary, dreary street. And I see the AA symbol up on the wall. And I think to myself, fuck, they got me again. This is where the crowd laughs. I've told this part a lot. Turned out that this was a place called the Phoenix Concept. And it was a place where it was a halfway house for homeless alcoholics. He said, "Why don't you come to the meeting?" And I went to the 5:30 meeting, which Ray Hayworth was running. The basket came around, and I put my last dollar in there because I had my bus trip, and then I bought something to drink. And I had no more money. I was broke. I had nothing left. And I didn't know it was a halfway house, but the meeting ends and this man comes over to me. He's like, do you need a place to sleep tonight? And they explained the program to me. And I would stay in that program for 1 year. All the stuff that I talk about now was driven into my head for that 1 year. I did, how many meetings did I do in the first 90 days? Because we talk about 90 and 90, and people are like, I did da-da-da. I'm like, oh, yeah? But remember, I was living on Skid Row, right? So calculator, 4 times 90. I did 360 meetings in 90 days. That's 4 meetings a day. We had 3 in-house, 1, and then at night we go out. We would sand plaques, and what we did is we made plaques and piggy banks. We put them on display, then people would donate. And we were a bunch of Skid Row alcoholics paying our own rent. That was the miracle of it. This is what I would call an original sober living. It is what I would call original sober living. Now, during this time, I had a girlfriend. And since I'm not going into my full story this time around, I am going to kind of wrap it up here. But I'm going to go pee first. I can't hold it no more. Much better. It's true, Amber. We do still do 3 to 4 meetings a day. I've already been to 3. I went to a 10, 12, and then the 2 o'clock. All right. So I would go in, I would complete the full year. They came up to me a few weeks later and said, Dion, if we knew you were 18 years old, we wouldn't have let you in. See, this was all by the grace of God. Everything that happened was nothing short of a miracle. It was nothing short of a miracle. Right away, God's working in my life. See, He had a plan for me. I'll go on to be on a team called the West Side Drug Free Youth Team. We will win the Best Prevention Award 2 years in a row. The first year we won it, I was about 6 months sober. And we had done a drug-free march. Happens every September, still goes on. It has been stolen and it's done anyway, it doesn't matter. And we did this drug-free march. And the governor at the time, Roy Romer, asked the man that ran our team, he said, do you have anybody that would like to give up and say a few words? And he's like, yeah, Dion. Right. And my girlfriend there was there with me, Shannon, who's my wife now. And she stayed with me through all of this. She was with me when I was drinking and got sober and lived on Skid Row. And yeah, I met her right after I got emancipated. When I met her, I was 17, she was 15. So about 6 months after I got emancipated. Anyway, and I remember I got up there and there were thousands of people in the crowd. And it was a diverse crowd. And so what I talked about was how alcohol and drugs do not care who you are. They don't know your age. They don't know your gender. They don't understand your race. And therefore, we must come together as a community. And it shouldn't matter who you are or what your race is. And the crowd was cheering. And I thought to myself, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I loved it. I loved it. Another addiction. I like being the center of attention. I'm still doing it. 6 people here, right? Doesn't need to be thousands of people all the time. By the time I was 20, I became a drug and alcohol counselor. I was a drug and alcohol counselor for Abraham Lincoln High School. Well, I wasn't there was a guy that I worked with. His name was Benny, and he had the right letters behind his name. I would get 12 years of sobriety and go out. I'm going to kind of speed the story up here a little bit. During that time, I would get married, have a kid, get divorced. Then I would get somebody pregnant, then get married, then have a kid, then get divorced. And I have 2 biological children. I actually should have I should have 3 more boys. But miscarriages. When I was about 9 years sober, like I am now, I decided that I didn't need AA anymore. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped helping people. And within 3 years, I got drunk again. July 4th. Another July 4th story. It was in Newport Beach with the in-laws. Yeah, the running joke is, well, I went on vacation with the in-laws. You drink too. You would too. Now, I'm a little ashamed that when I relapsed, it was on a Coors Light. All right. It would only take about 3 to 4 months before I was homeless again. It wouldn't take very long. See, the disease of alcoholism is a progressive disease. That means that once you have a certain tolerance to alcohol, it does not ever go down, ever, ever. No, it doesn't. I was able to drink just as much. Okay. And I would go out for 15 years. I don't know how to describe the hell. All right. And there's a lot of things that did happen that I party with a lot of different types of people. I would be on radio. I'd do some television stuff. But, when it came down to it, I finally quit at 45, but it took me 2 years. And As a lot of you know, and this is kind of how I'm going to end, is a lot of you know that I do a lot of stuff in the community. And a lot of you know that I am not willing to raise my hand. I do not like the line, is anybody here willing to sponsor? Because it's not the right question. And that question almost killed me. For 2 years, I kept going to detox, begging for help. See, I'd worked detox. So my expectation, and it was a reasonable expectation, was that I was going to go there and they were going to be able to help me. They would be able to put me into treatment. They would be able to talk to me. But there wasn't any recovered alcoholics working there anymore. They were all people with bachelor's degrees. And because I was so fucked up, I couldn't figure it out. I would go to meetings and they'd ask if anybody that was there looking for a sponsor, and I would raise my hand, but that's not what they were asking. I was so out of it, I could not hear the fucking question. And the question was, who here is willing to sponsor? They must have thought I was nuts. And it wasn't until a man came up to me, Paul, I talked about him at the beginning of the meeting, came up to me and said, Dion, we love you, but you need to find God and you need to find him quick. I'm like, it's about time. It only took me 2 years. It only took 2 years for somebody to tell me they were going to be my sponsor. See, when I came into the program the first time, you said you were new, and 3-4 people would approach you after the meeting. Hey, I'll sponsor you. I'll sponsor you. It was a first come, first served situation. We used to argue over who got the newcomer. Now we let them flail. And it's one thing that just irritates the crap out of me. It's why I started the grassroots meeting. And it took me months to learn how to walk, how to talk. I would slur my words sober because I have been drinking every single day for the last 15 years. And I did not know how to talk soberly. It was out of my purview. If you listen to my stuff, you know I have a pretty good life today, man. All my kids are in my life. I have a great marriage. I have a marriage that other people look up to. Weird. Weird. All right. I have a host of friends. My friends actually love me. It's weird. People care about. This is probably the best way I could describe it. When I first got here, there was nobody willing to carry my casket. Now I'm pretty sure I could find 6 people to do it. In fact, probably a lot more. You know, there's a lot of stuff that did happen in this part too. I would go through PTSD. I'd have a lot of things that happen, but we're at 60 minutes and I scratched the surface of my story. My story, it'd probably take me like 3-4 hours to tell the whole thing. But I think this one will do. I think, we tell our stories. The reason that we tell our stories is because it provides hope for others. Storytelling is the number one way to provide hope for other people. And I was always taught that when it's your birthday, you share your story. That's why I'm doing this. All right. Well, if you'd like to hear me babble for another 20 minutes in about an hour, you can do so. I'm doing the lead. Amber asked me to do the lead for Night Owls tonight. And now I'm going to have to go do a little bit of work on it. But the topic on it is kind of going to be freedom through the 4-step. Because there's a lot of freedoms that happen in that 4-step. So, but thank you everybody for hanging out for the last hour, for listening, for being a part of everything that I do. We really can make a difference. So I'm going to kind of end with this. I am grateful to be an alcoholic. Because if I wasn't, I can't think of any other reason I would have searched for God. I wouldn't have the friends I wouldn't have the friends that I have right now in my life. I wouldn't be able to make a difference. I wouldn't be able to help other people and save their lives and their families. I wouldn't be able to help those little children that wonder why their daddy doesn't want to spend any time with them. Thank you, Clara. Clara says, congratulations, Dion. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about that. Thank you for your sobriety. Tyler says, thank you so much, Dion. You are all very, very welcome. At this point in my life, I have a lot of knowledge and I have a lot of experience. I just want to give it away. I don't want to be famous. I want to be infamous, which is probably a lot more selfish. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. I really do. I love you. You know I do. Peace out and have a day.